अल्लाह ताला जिस तरह उनको फौजी महाज के ऊपर जो है शिकस्त फाश हुई, उनको जिल्लत उठानी पड़ी सारी दुनिया में, पाकिस्तान को अपने पानी की दफा में जो कुछ भी करना पड़ा जो है जरूर करेंगे। अगर ये एक नौबत आई हम चाहते हैं बरसगीर के अंदर, लेकिन भारत ने अगर ये कोई फिर तो हमारे ऊपर कोई जंग मुसल्लत करने की कोशिश की तो जो उनके साथ पहले हुआ उससे ज्यादा बुरा होगा।
When we say in India put the treaty in abeyance, that has absolutely no basis in law. It doesn't exist. So the in abeyance is essentially a contrived phrase in order to allow India to move away from the treaty and say we have nothing to do with it, which has real consequences. I think we will discuss them later. But one of the consequences is that India has not shared flood data with us for last 4 years. And it has now, in last year, twice released or withheld water at will from Pakistan's rivers. So
this basically is a summary of what India has done. In fact, Khurram Sahab, why don't you quickly run us through this?
The essential idea is that there is some notion that India hasn't done anything since it put into abeyance, when in fact it does a lot of things. It first put the treaty in abeyance, which is illegal, but it affects all western rivers. But then it announced that it's going to not share any data with Pakistan. So they cut off the data. Again, it affects all rivers. Then they say, and this is important, a three-pronged water denial strategy. So they're going to deny Pakistan's waters through tunnels, through diversions, through bigger and larger dams. And then, of course, they actually did so, and I think since I live in Gujranwala and I see it personally every time I come and go from Islamabad, is that on May 4th and 5th, 2025, that's just before Markai-Haq, they closed the gates of the Baglehar Dam, there are 4 non-kinetic options.
Okay.
And then there is the kinetic option of going to war.
Let's come to that later.
Okay.
Welcome back to Hindustani TV News. The Indus Waters Treaty is dominating global headlines right now, but the narrative coming out of Islamabad is completely twisted. While Pakistani politicians and television anchors are screaming about an impending water crisis and running to the international community to cry foul, they are intentionally ignoring the real elephant in the room. The problem is not water. Terrorism is the problem. For decades, New Delhi has maintained a highly accommodating stance, letting billions of cubic meters of water flow across the border while enduring cross-border terror campaigns sponsored by Islamabad. But the days of strategic patience are officially over. By putting the treaty into abeyance and demanding strict modifications, India is forcing Pakistan to swallow an incredibly bitter pill. India is hitting harder than ever before, using its hydro-geopolitical leverage to send a definitive message. It is time to ask the ultimate question. When will Pakistan finally talk about stopping terror instead of just begging for water? Today, we are going to break down exactly how strong India's legal and technical position is under international law, and why Islamabad has absolutely no cards left to play. But first, let us take a look at how the Pakistani media and establishment are losing their minds over India's aggressive move.
And Chenab and the eastern rivers were given to India, Ravi, Beas and Satluj. Let's move on. And this
hold on here. I think your audience...
All right, let's go back.
Your audience will be served by knowing that Indus Waters Treaty, although it is now deemed a gold standard because it persisted through 4 wars, endless enmity between India and Pakistan, but it is a highly unusual water treaty in which instead of apportioning the percentage of water in the rivers, it apportioned the rivers itself. So the 3 eastern rivers, right behind you, Ravi, Beas, they were given completely to India for India's exclusive usage. So Pakistan doesn't get a drop of water from it unless India decides to, as it did last year, to cause floods in Lahore and in South Punjab. So it's actually a division of rivers, not apportionment of water. So the usual criteria of upper riparian, lower riparian doesn't actually apply here.
Which is quite unprecedented.
Which is unprecedented.
Okay, so that's an important point. Some more information if we can go forward. Now, this is the importance for us. 80% of Pakistan's irrigated agriculture is fed by the Indus system. The 65-year-old treaty has been in force. Of course, now it's in abeyance by India. Longest running water sharing deal in the world till India decided to sabotage it. 240 million people now, I think it's 250 million probably Pakistan's population, whose food security depends on these rivers, which is why we are taking a strong stand. And of course, there's no agreed exit mechanism. This is important, Khurram Saab. India's upstream control of the western rivers, it's very high risk, but Pakistan's legal position is very strong. And India's compliance with rulings, none so far. So they are basically playing with international law. Let's move on.
So 2 points on this slide.
Yes.
I mean, first of all, when we say India put the treaty in abeyance, that has absolutely no basis in law. It doesn't exist. So the in abeyance is essentially a contrived phrase in order to allow India to move away from the treaty and say we have nothing to do with it, which has real consequences. I think we will discuss them later. But one of the consequences is that India has not shared flood data with us for last 4 years. And it has now, in last year, twice released or withheld water at will from Pakistan's rivers. So
and should be by this treaty. The treaty that they enforce should respect the rights to use the water irrigation, the water of Indus. So yeah, you mentioned very clear that this issue should be put in the practice as soon as possible, that Pakistan has the rights to use it.
So what do you see? I mean, we have conveyed the message to the international community. We have told India that it's the matter of our lifelines. Our agriculture depends on it. So if the World Bank cannot play its role and India doesn't listen to us, so what options do Pakistan have then?
I think this international context is very complicated, not only on this issue. There are many issues all around the world that international law is very fragile. That I think that we should be optimistic in this case that the international community, particularly as you mentioned, World Bank and other international organizations should involve more in order to secure this treaty that is very important and relevant for the Pakistan in this particular moment. We hope that the issue will be de-escalate, but maybe will be should be a lot of pressure for the international actors. Could be also the pressure from US. Maybe also US should engage a little bit more to put pressure on this issue. Also, you are members, both countries are members of BRICS. Also in the framework of BRICS should be discussed about this issue. Shanghai Cooperation Organization, both states are member in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Pakistan and India. In BRICS also should be discussed this issue, because there are other relevant powers in this format, and this affect so many large number of people from that region. You are the 5th largest country in the world that is using water for the irrigation is very vital, especially for agriculture, as you know better, for agriculture.
Dr. Flavius, it's a very sensitive matter for the Pakistanis, and India and Pakistan are two nuclear countries. And do you understand, or the world understands the gravity of the matter? Because Pakistan has already conveyed since last year to the Indians that we cannot let this happen. And if we have to resort to the kinetic operations, we are going to do that. So who can play the important role practically? Will that be World Bank who brokered this treaty, or will that be Americans? Who can do that?
Yes, as you said, this issue is very well known maybe in Asia, particularly Southeast Asia. For example, in Europe, there is not so much concern because they are not dealing with this issue daily basis, being engaged in other crises, particularly the crisis in Ukraine, or they are affected the crisis from the Middle East. This crisis, as I mentioned at the beginning, is overlapping with these two major crises in the world. As happened last year when Pakistan is very outstanding succeeded to shut down airplanes of Indian airplanes and to win the war last year. We hope that also you have this mechanism. If it's in the worst case scenario, you have all the strings and powers in order to secure your rights. In the other, moreover, as you mentioned, who can play this issue or who can involve more? Yes, World Bank has this. Or should engage, because that will stay at the beginning of the treaty as a supervisor.
It's a serious issue. So in abeyance has no basis in law. So whatever your viewers might hear from the Indian side,
absolutely.
it has absolutely no basis in law.
This is again some of the dams that we've built and then they've built. But let's move on, because this is not directly relevant to today's discussion. Let's move on to the next one, and we can look at where we stand in terms of the map. Now, this is a new, very dangerous thing that the Indians have started. First, they were saying that they're just holding the treaty in abeyance, which is completely illegal, as you said. But now they're actually launching a project to divert water away from Chenab and take it to the Beas River, which means that it can have very dangerous consequences for Pakistan. And this is one of the most, I would say, urgent challenges that we have, and which is why I'm sure there was much discussed on this issue also. This is the area, and in fact we can show you some more detail if you go to the next one, so people can understand the kind of dangerous stuff that India is doing. So this is the Chenab River, and they're digging a tunnel through which they're going to take the water to the other river. This is our water. So they're actually taking our water.
So when we look at this, I think it's important to note this is theft. This is sheer
pure
theft. This is pure theft, because the Indus Waters Treaty allowed India non-consumptive use of the western rivers.
Right.
So India could build electricity generating dams on it, but it could never have enough storage which would begin to hold Pakistan's water. So the non-consumptive part is extremely important. And so India, by announcing this publicly, is essentially saying we are going to steal Pakistan's water.
And this is something that we need to now figure out.
This we need to figure out.
Let's move on quickly and now figure out what are the options for us. Now, this basically is a summary of what India has done. In fact, Khurram Sahab, why don't you quickly run us through this?
The essential idea is that there is some notion that India hasn't done anything since it put into abeyance, when in fact it does a lot of things. It first put the treaty in abeyance, which is illegal, but it affects all western rivers. But then it announced that it's going to not share any data with Pakistan. So they cut off the data. Again, it affects all rivers. Then they say, and this is important, a three-pronged water denial strategy. So they're going to deny Pakistan's waters through tunnels, through diversions, through bigger and larger dams. And then, of course, they actually did so, and I think since I live in Gujranwala and I see it personally every time I come and go from Islamabad, is that on May 4th and 5th, 2025, that's just before Mar-Kai-Haq, they closed the gates of the Baghlihar Dam, which reduced flows in the Chenab up to 90% down. So Chenab was dried when we went to Mar-Kai-Haq war. Then on May 5th, again the next day, they shut the gates of the Saral Dam. Again in May 25, they flushed the reservoir. Again, this is something that against the treaty, because there is an issue of a highly technical issue, but they're not allowed to flush the reservoir. Then, of course, they say they're going to build Kishan Ganga further on raise its heights, on the Jhelum River. Then they did another capacity testing, which hurts River Ravi. Again, this is what you just told. This was launched in June 2025, the project that you just showed. The 113 Chenab diversion canal feasibility was launched then. Then they had cleared by that time in late June 800 hectare forests. They wanted to build the Sawalkot Dam, which has cost a large amount of financing from India. And then, of course, this was also a cause for concern, that they decided that they were going to fast track all the current water storage projects on the Chenab and Jhelum rivers, the Ratle, Bursar, Pakuldul. They also actually announced again back in December again, Kawar, Kiru, Kirthai, and one. So, and this is the one I think your viewers may remember the most, that in August and September, they opened the dam gates on the river Ravi and on Chenab and Sutlej, and particularly Ravi and Sutlej, which have been dry for many decades, suddenly got flooded. Lahore got flooded. So your viewers might remember that. And the last line I think is very important, is that Mr. Jaishankar, who is the External Affairs Minister, he reaffirmed what Indian Interior Minister said back in May 25. He said, we are never going to restore Indus Waters Treaty. And Mr. Patel, who is the Indian Water Minister, that's why he's important, he said it again, and for your viewers to note, that we will not allow a single drop of water of the Indus to go into Pakistan.
So now this is where we stand. We now need to figure out, Khurram Sahib, I mean, today's the seminar was also aimed at that, at highlighting or telling the world that this is the situation, this is how India is not only doing something blatantly illegal, but it is going in a direction where Pakistan will have to take.
There are 4 non-kinetic options.
Okay.
And then there is the kinetic option of going to war.
Let's come to that later.
Okay. But the non-kinetic options are one, which Pakistan is already undertaking, which is to take it to the international courts. So we have taken the case to Permanent Court of Arbitration. It has ruled in the last year 3 times. It's unprecedented. It's ruled 3 times in our favor. And then of course there have been rulings from the UN Special Rapporteurs. They got together, a good dozen of them, and announced in December that India has essentially lodged a crime. And so we have good results from that approach. And actually we can take this approach if Pakistan, I think in the coming months, to take to the International Court of Justice, where there are tremendous precedents, because we are not the first 2 nations to go, not to war, but have a conflict over water.
So they looked at the legal option, and it is clear that India is not interested in accepting any ruling from any court of law.
It says the courts are illegal.
So
doesn't accept jurisdiction.
Right. So while that may give us some moral standing, it really doesn't help us deal with the actual situation on the ground that they are now in the process of undertaking. Second is the informational campaign or the awareness campaign, letting people know in the world how serious this is. Now,
I would call it exposing India campaign.
Exposing India campaign. What was interesting was the Chinese scholar Victor Gao was also at the conference today, and he said that India should also remember that it is also a lower riparian when it comes to...
It's a mid-riparian between China and Pakistan.
Of course, but when it comes from... So, obviously, the rights of lower riparians are a well-established fact the world over. So, perhaps by focusing on the fact that India is using its status as an upper riparian to punish Pakistan, that is not just illegal, it is immoral. Do you think that could actually make a difference, this awareness campaign?
Yes, it can. I think not in the short term.
Welcome back. What you just witnessed in that video is pure panic disguised as victimization. The Pakistani establishment wants the world to believe that India is acting arbitrarily. But the reality is that New Delhi's legal, diplomatic, and technical stand is completely rock solid. Let us break down the technical facts that the Pakistani media conveniently hides from its public. Under the original terms of the Indus Waters Treaty signed in 1960, India was given exclusive control over the 3 eastern rivers, which are the Ravi, Beas, and Sutlej. Pakistan was allocated the 3 western rivers, the Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab. However, the treaty explicitly grants India the legal right to run-of-the-river hydroelectric projects on these western rivers. This means India can legally construct infrastructure to generate power and regulate water flow without permanently diverting it. For years, Pakistan has used malicious, bad-faith technical objections to delay every single Indian project, from Kishanganga to Rattle. They dragged India to the Permanent Court of Arbitration while simultaneously demanding a neutral expert, weaponizing the treaty's dispute resolution mechanism to stall India's domestic development.
Furthermore, under Article 60 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, a material breach by one party justifies the other party suspending or terminating the agreement. India is effectively establishing that a state cannot claim the benefits of a peaceful water-sharing treaty while actively funding and pushing cross-border terrorism across that very same border. Blood and water cannot flow together. This is a brilliant masterstroke by Indian diplomacy that completely shifts the paradigm. Look at the ground reality today. India has completed mega engineering projects like the Shahpur Kandi Dam, which effectively stops India's share of water from flowing unutilized into Pakistan. This is well within India's sovereign rights. Pakistan is an agrarian economy entirely dependent on the Indus Basin. If India maximizes its legal water usage on the western rivers as permitted by the treaty, Pakistan's agricultural sector will face an existential collapse. By tying the water issue directly to state-sponsored terrorism, India has backed Islamabad into a corner. No international court or Western ally is going to bail Pakistan out this time because India is operating strictly within the realm of international law and national security. The message from New Delhi is loud and clear. If you want water security, you must first guarantee security from terror. Stop the narrative games, stop the nuclear blackmail, and fix your internal security apparatus, because India will not back down. What do you think about India's powerful new stance on the Indus Waters Treaty? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Hindustani TV News for more deep dives. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.